Picture a weathered pirate ship slicing through endless blue waves, its tattered black flag snapping in salt-tinged wind.
Hollywood has fed you lies about these sea wolves during. They want you to believe pirates were party animals.
But here's the brutal truth that'll shatter every romantic pirate fantasy you've ever entertained in your mind.
Most pirates weren't guzzling alcohol all day, Sue. They were literally dying of thirst, surrounded by undrinkable water. Millions upon millions of gallons of water, and they couldn't drink without killing themselves in the most agonizing way. The ocean was their greatest enemy and cruelest joke rolled into one massive, mocking liquid prison. That vast blue desert stretched in every direction, promising death to anyone desperate enough to drink it. Every wave that crashed over the bow was a liquid slap, reminding them they floated on poison.
Salt water would dehydrate you faster than the Caribbean sun, turning your kidneys into useless, rotting meat.
The irony was enough to drive even the sanest man completely mad with desperate, consuming frustration. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, you see. This wasn't poetry, it was their nightmare. This daily reality could transform the toughest sea dog into a desperate, hallucinating wreck begging for mercy. When your tongue swells like sun-baked leather, and your lips crack open like ancient parchment scrolls. Every swallow feels like sandpaper scraping down your raw throat, making fresh water more precious than gold. These weren't sailors looking for drinks. They were survivors trapped in the ultimate life or death game, racing against time, dehydration, and the cruel mathematics of liquid rationing that could sentence entire crews. The question haunting every captain wasn't about treasure, it was about crew survival time remaining. How long could their men survive on whatever murky, disgusting liquid sloshed in rotting wooden barrels? But finding drinkable water was only the beginning of their floating nightmare aboard these cursed ships. What they managed to store quickly transformed into something that would make your stomach turn violently. Every pirate ship carried its liquid lifeline in massive wooden barrels, sealed tight with tar and rope.
Stored in the deepest, darkest, most humid parts of the hull, where sunlight never reached them.
Crews loaded crystal-clear water from mountain sprongs, convinced they'd solved their thirst problems for months ahead.
What they got instead was a floating science experiment that would make health inspectors pass out.
Within weeks at sea, that pristine water transformed into something belonging in a witch's cauldron instead. The wooden barrels became tiny ecosystems, brewing their own special brand of liquid nightmare below deck.
Algae bloomed in brilliant green clouds, turning water into liquid emeralds mixed with disgusting pond scum.
The smell alone could knock a grown man backwards, but the real horror was yet to come.
When desperate crew members opened those barrels after weeks, the water wasn't just green and slimy.
It was alive with white, writhing worms and mysterious creatures that nobody could possibly identify or explain.
Some looked like tiny snakes, others pulsed like beating hearts. A few had too many legs.
One ship's cook described it as opening a barrel of nightmares. The water moved more than ocean. Pirates couldn't afford to be picky about their drinking water when death was the only alternative.
They developed their first survival hack. If you can't beat slime and worms, mask them completely.
They'd pour rum or vinegar into putrid water to disguise the revolting taste and kill creatures.
The alcohol made liquid somewhat drinkable and gave crews liquid courage to swallow witch's brew. Captains became masters of positive spin, convincing crews that wiggling worms were actually extra protein gifts.
"Drink up, boys," one captain said.
Those little swimmers will put meat on your bones. Whether crews believed this cheerful interpretation or desperately wanted to, didn't matter. They drank anyway. They choked down wormy water cocktails and pretended everything was perfectly normal for their mental survival. As revolting as drinking living water became, pirates discovered their liquid nightmares were getting mathematically worse. When floating on endless ocean with 200 thirsty pirates, mathematics becomes life and death survival calculations. 4 measly cups of liquid covering drinking, cooking, and desperate attempts at washing accumulated salt and grime. Modern survival experts recommend at least a gallon per person in hot climates. Pirates survived on 1/4, all while doing back-breaking labor under scorching sun, hauling ropes, climbing rigging, and fighting deadly battles. They were essentially running marathons every day on a coffee cup's worth of precious, life-sustaining water. Pirate codes weren't romantic treasure-sharing guidelines. They were survival documents treating water distribution with deadly seriousness. These weren't polite suggestions. They were laws carved into ship culture, with death as punishment. The equal bellies rule meant captains shared exact same rations, creating a democracy of desperation. Smart captains learned a fundamental truth. Leaders who ate while men starved would soon feed the fishes.
The mathematics of survival demanded absolute unity when water stores showed more air than liquid.
Even experienced sea wolves knew they were racing against a merciless clock, ticking with every drop. Rationing created its own twisted economy aboard ships that would fascinate modern economists studying desperate markets. They'd wager their liquid lifeline like coins, creating marketplaces where hope and desperation drove transactions. One sailor lost an entire week's water in one evening, forcing captains to limit gambling.
Some pirates were apparently terrible at both cards and basic survival math that could kill.
Even strictest rationing couldn't solve the fundamental problem. Barrels eventually emptied, and then came desperation.
When water supplies dropped dangerously low, crews started eyeing each other with wild, desperate looks.
Pirates learned to pray for the thing that usually terrified them most. Das Mond, violent, dangerous storms. Dark clouds on the horizon could transform quarreling pirates into coordinated teams working with Swiss precision. The moment someone spotted storms, entire ships exploded into frantic activity, like coordinated military operations. Pirates stretched massive sails into elaborate funnels, turning vessels into floating water collection devices, impressing engineers. Every rope, canvas scrap, bucket, and barrel pressed into emergency service when heavens finally opened.
Pirates licked water off rigging like animals, collected it in filthy hats, wrung out soaked clothes.
The ship's cook noted, "Men became human rain gutters. I've never seen such work enthusiasm."
Grown men wept with relief, gulping rainwater from boots this soaked. This shows their complete desperation level.
Pirates fought over prime collection spots, like they were battling for buried treasure chests below.
Some learned to spread shirts for larger collection surfaces. Others discovered superior rope water channeling configurations. But storms were unreliable survival partners. They might bring salvation or just destructive death. Nature might dump thousands of gallons tantalizingly close, while threatening to tear ships apart completely. Pirates became amateur meteorologists, learning to read clouds like treasure maps, predicting water or destruction.
One captain wrote, "Storms without rain are like women without mercy, beautiful but deadly."
A single good storm could fill dozens of barrels, transforming dying crews into hopeful men. But when skies remained cruelly clear for weeks, pirates sought salvation from entirely different sources. Landfall became more than welcome relief. It represented salvation itself. the difference between survival and death. Pirates developed mystical abilities to spot land from impossible distances, trained by pure, desperate survival instinct. Their eyes caught hints of green vegetation, bird flight patterns, wave changes indicating hidden coastlines.
Uninhabited islands became treasure chests of different sorts.
Spotting land meant sending scouting parties ashore to search desperately for life-saving freshwater springs through jungle. They followed animal paths, listened for trickling streams, looked for lush vegetation indicating water nearby. Finding an actual spring was greeted with more wild celebration than discovering Spanish silver chests. One crew spent 3 days doing nothing but drinking fresh water and filling every possible container.
Never seen men so excited about something costing nothing, requiring no fighting. Pirates would dig shallow beach wells, hoping to strike fresh water floating above in heavier salt water below.
Sometimes it worked, sometimes they got brackish water, but they tried because death was alternative. Pirates became expert coastline readers, identifying which geological formations might hide precious freshwater springs below. When inhabited islands offered better sources, pirates faced moral calculations, often ending badly for locals. Raiding villages for water became as systematic as stealing gold, leaving trails of dried-up settlements. Smart pirates understood destroying water sources was like burning their own future. Ifsing. They needed return access. Some established crude agreements, protection from other pirates in exchange for reliable freshwater access rights. Moving water from island springs to ships required staggering logistics and incredible coordination between crew members. Pirates formed human chains from sources to boats, passing heavy casks like the most precious cargo.
Because they were handling something more valuable than gold, Penny. You can't drink doubloons when dying.
Unlog describes hauling spring water like buried treasure, except this treasure actually keeps us alive.
Even island raids couldn't always be counted on when crews needed water most desperately for survival.
That harsh reality drove them to target ships carrying something more precious than Spanish gold. Pirates scanning horizons weren't always seeking galleons loaded with silver bars and precious stone chests.
More often, they hunted merchant ships carrying barrel after barrel of fresh water for colonies.
These water wagons of the sea became prime targets for crews running dangerously low on resources.
We expected gold, not water! Why are they taking the water?
When pirates ignored treasure chests and headed for water barrels, merchants were utterly bewildered by priorities.
One merchant captain wrote, "They ignored silver coins, took every drop stay. I was puzzled, not frightened."
Pirates developed intelligence networks, specifically tracking ships with large water quantities, rather than traditional treasure loads. They knew merchant routes carrying colony provisions and seasonal patterns determining when vessels were most vulnerable. Informants in port cities provided tips about well-supplied vessels to send. Water information was more valuable than gold rumors. The raids became exercises in strange maritime courtesy that would have amused observers if stakes weren't deadly. Pirates boarded with laser focus, completely ignoring valuables to head directly for water storage areas below. One merchant described pirates methodically testing each barrel, rejecting anything tasting slightly off or contaminated somehow.
They were more selective about our water than my wife choosing tea leaves, he wrote with bewilderment.
Successful water pirates understood brutal survival mathematics from both perspectives: their needs, victims' safety chances. They calculated precisely how much to take, leaving merchants just enough liquid to reach ports safely. This wasn't kindness, but practical calculation. Dead merchants couldn't spread word about reasonable pirates.
We take what we need, leave what you need. Fairer than oceans.
But even successful water raids couldn't solve every problem when pirates found themselves in empty waters. Far from potential targets or coastlines, they attempted desperate solutions, pushing boundaries of ingenuity and stupidity.
When down to last cups of revolting water with more creatures than liquid, some attempted experimental science.
The most ambitious tried crude distillation craze, boiling seawater to capture steam and condense it back. In theory, this could work and save lives. In practice, it was floating disaster on wooden ships. Every fuel scrap was precious. Every flame was potential catastrophe that could burn entire vessels completely. Pirates rigged makeshift stills using cooking pots, canvas, metal tubing sleigh. Enormous amounts of hope and desperation. The process required constant hot fire to boil seawater while cooling steam for condensation simultaneously.
All while ships pitched and rolled like drunken sailors, making precision nearly impossible to maintain consistently.
We're recreating God's rain cycle using kitchen equipment and prayer runs. Results predictably terrible. Fuel requirements made distillation impractical. Boiling consumed wood needed for cooking, warmth, and emergency repairs. Crews discovered they could produce few cups of water, but had no fuel left for survival. Desperation drove some to drink small amounts of seawater, believing bodies could gradually adapt to salt. This was a deadly mistake, and drinking seawater accelerates dehydration, requiring more fresh water to process excess salt. Pirates attempting gradual adaptation often died more quickly than crew members who abstained from seawater entirely. Some attempted seaweed tea by boiling ocean plants caught in nets, hoping anything green provided nutrition. Results were uniformly disgusting, often making crews violently sick, but desperate men try absolutely anything available.
One cook documented frantic attempts creating drinkable liquid from every seaweed type they could possibly find.
Kelp tea tastes like Neptune's own bathwater, but it's wet and goes down our throats somehow.
These desperate experiments revealed how human bodies systematically rebel when pushed beyond their natural survival limits. It started with bleeding gums making eating rock-hard biscuits painful, turning every meal into agony.
Then came loose teeth wobbling like poorly hammered nails, threatening to fall out with every bite.
Pirates who once terrified merchants with fearsome grins became toothless, unable to chew anything hard.
Old healed wounds mysteriously reopened without warning, bleeding free like fresh injuries refusing to close again.
Scurvy killed more pirates than Spanish cannons, storms, and sword fights combined throughout their dangerous maritime careers.
The disease was slow, torturous death sentence, claiming up to 6% of crews on voyages. Severe dehydration compounded every problem. Without adequate water, wounds heal slower, infections spread like wildfire. Pirates began seeing detailed mirages of freshwater springs on empty horizons, their minds playing increasingly cruel tricks. Some became convinced they could smell rain in clear skies, holding conversations with imaginary companions. The cook noted half his crew talked with people who haven't been aboard for months, maybe died.
Malnutrition and dehydration created feedback loops. Couldn't digest food without water. Couldn't waste water on digestion.
Personal hygiene became impossible, leading to skin infections and parasites, further weakening crews beyond their limits.
Men who once terrorized the Caribbean were reduced to scratching lice and boils like mangy dogs.
Pirates developed gallows humor, nicknaming wormy water Poseidon's revenge, and rotting teeth natural Neptune dentures.
They called bleeding gums ruby smiles, and malnutrition weight loss being fighting trim and ready for action.
This dark humor kept men mentally stable when their bodies betrayed them in the most horrific ways.
Through systematic suffering, crews discovered something remarkable about human nature and the power of desperate unity. The crews that survived longest understood unity wasn't a nice ideal. It was literally life versus death. When supplies dropped critically low, successful captains doubled down on equal bellies, sharing everything with everyone. Pirates developed elaborate meal rituals, transforming basic survival into something approaching joyful celebration of hope and brotherhood. In the end, their greatest treasure wasn't gold, it was facing the ocean together, drop by drop.